Alright. Okay, we're moving on to the more biology side of things. Kinda. We may finally know how the first cells on Earth formed. The story of how life started on the Earth is one that scientists are eager to learn. Researchers may have uncovered an important detail in the plot of Chapter 1. An explanation of how bubbles of fat came to form on the membranes of the very first cells. The key part of the new findings made by a team from the Scripps Research Institute in California is a chemical process called phosphorylation, which may have happened earlier than previously thought. This process adds a group of atoms that include phosphorus to a molecule, bringing extra functions with it. Functions that can turn a spherical collection of fats, called protocells, into more advanced versions of themselves, able to be more versatile, stable, and chemically active. These protocells are widely thought to have been the vital building blocks for biochemistry more than 3.5 billion years ago, perhaps emerging from hot springs under the ocean along the way to the evolution of more complex biological structures. At some point, we all wonder where we came from, says chemist. Oh my god. Ranana Krishnamurthy from the Scripps University Institute. This finding helps us better understand the chemical environments of early Earth so we can uncover the origins of life and how life came to evolve on early Earth. The scientists hypothesized that because the process is so widespread in the body's biological functions, phosphorylation is thought to have been involved in the early stages of protocell formation. Replicating the conditions likely to match Earth's early days in the lab, the team combined chemicals such as fatty acids, glycerol, to try and create more complex why I'm not a scientist. Vesicles, bubble-like structures similar to protocells that facilitate cellular processes. With some tweaking of temperatures and acidity, the researchers were able to get chemical reactions that they were looking for, proving that phosphorylation may have been at work as protocells developed into the primordial ooze. The vesicles were able to transition from a fatty acid environment to a phospholipid environment during our experiments, suggesting a similar chemical environment that could have existed 4 billion years ago, says chemist Ishnai Laboratories from the Scripps Research Institute. The team described it as a possible pathway for creation of phospholipids and more complex types of vessel membrane. However, there's a lot more study that can be done before we can be sure about how life came to be on the Earth. Looking back billions of years isn't easy, of course, but scientists continue to make discoveries about what happened right after the Earth was formed, and all plays into our investigations on how life formed on other planets too. Moving on to stuff. Well, actually, maybe we should put here in here for these two. Go with this. Living fossil tree frozen in time for 66 million years ago, being planted in secret locations. Lemmy primes, thought to have gone extinct 2 million years ago, were rediscovered in 1994. Scientists are now hoping to reintroduce the species in the wild in a conservation effort that could take centuries. Scientists are planting living fossil trees in secret locations in a bid to bring back the lost species from the brink of extinction. An effort that could take centuries. While Millie pines were believed to have disappeared some 2 million years ago, fossils of the species date back to the Cretaceous period, when 145 million to 66 million years ago, shown they have barely changed in appearance since that time. But in 1994, hikers in Australia's Blue Mountains stumbled upon a relict stand of these ancient conifers. Now only around 60 of them remain in Wollemi National Park. They are threatened by Phytoplethora cinnamomani, a pathologic water mold that causes dieback, and by rampant wildfires that intermittently rage through the south of New South Wales. Since its rediscovery, Wollemi pines have been grown in botanical gardens and private spaces around the world. With the Wollemi Pine Recovery Team, a partnership between the Australian government, scientists, and conservationists, has begun the process of reintroducing seedlings to two sites in the Wollemi National Park. The sites comprise of high elevation sandstone gorges that are sufficiently deep and narrow and steep to provide refuge from frequent intense wildfires and drought, the representatives said in a statement emailed to Live Science. There is no evidence of infection of the it's a water mold at either site when surveyed immediately prior to the translocations, and there is a low but non-zero likelihood of unauthorized visitation due to the remoteness. Following a pilot transplantation effort in 2012, the recovery team initiated a more intense project in 2019. Over 400 saplings were transplanted at two sites, and due to drought conditions, the team later hauled several thousand gallons of water to plants in order to help them survive. Later that year, a substantial number of the trees were destroyed by bushfires. Only 58 saplings made it to 2023. In 2021, 502 more Wollemi pines were planted at sites to replace those lost in the fires. Survival has greatly exceeded expectations, due in part to several years of favorable La Niña conditions following the 2021 population augmentations. El Niña, is a periodic climate patterns that features colder than average waters in the central and east central equatorial Pacific. Increased rainfalls due to climate phenomenon benefited the new transplants, but it seems to be coming to an end. Landslide caused by heavy rains in 2022 led to further fatalities, but more than 80% survived. More will be transplanted in 2024. The team has taken extensive steps to prevent the reintroduction of the water mold to the sites. Their locations are concealed from the public, and even the reintroduced team limits their time near the plants. They repeatedly disinfect their shoes to reduce the likelihood they will traces of water mold. Even a few small spores might spell death for the nascent population. They have also intently located some of the young trees in areas that might be subject to bushfires to help address the knowledge gaps regarding their response and ability to tolerate fires. While the new populations are being intensely monitored, the fate of the species in the wild is far from assured. The young trees grow less than 0.4 inches or 1 centimeter a year and will take decades to reach the maturity and produce seeds. Some may produce offshoots in the meantime, though when they may begin propagating themselves in this fashion remains unknown. Fires and other climate-related issues, such as reduced rainfall, are likely to interfere with the restoration efforts in the coming years. The scientists view their efforts as a multi-generational one. A new cohort of stewards will be needed to take their place in the ensuing decades. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. All right, ancient viruses, millions of years ago, shaped the bodies we have today. Ancient viruses that affect vertebrates hundreds of millions of years ago played a pivotal role in the evolution of our advanced brains and large bodies, the study says Thursday. I guess, yeah, but it's not Thursday, but I mean, February 7th, 17th, I mean. The research published in the journal Cell examined the origins of myelin, an insulated layer of fatty tissue that forms around the nerves and allows electrical impulses to travel faster. According to the authors, a gene sequence acquired from retroviruses, viruses that invade their host's DNA, is crucial for myelin production, and the code is now found in modern mammals, amphibians, and fish. The thing I find most remarkable is that all the diversity of modern vertebrates that we know of, the size they've achieved, elephants, giraffes, anacondas, bullfrogs, condors, wouldn't have happened, senior author, neuroscientist Robin Franklin of the Atos Labs Cambridge Institute of Science told. A team led by Penny Ghosh, a computational biologist and geneticist in the Franklin's lab, trawled through genome databases to try and discover the genetics that were likely associated with the cells that produce myelin. Specifically, he was interested in exploring the mysterious non-coding regions of the genome that had no obvious function and once dismissed as junk, but are now recognized as having an evolutionary importance. Ghosh's search landed upon a particular sequence derived from an endogenous retrovirus long lurking in our genes, which the team dubbed retromyelin. To test their findings, researchers carried out experiments in which they knocked down the retromyelin sequence in rat cells and found that they no longer produced the basic protein required for myelin formation. Next, they searched for the retromyelin-like sequences in the genomes of other species, finding similar codes in jawed vertebrates, fellow mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians, but not in jawless vertebrates or invertebrates. This led them to believe the sequence appeared in the Tree of Life around the same time as jaws, which first evolved around 360 million years ago in the Devonian period, known as the Age of Fishes. There's always been an evolutionary pressure to make nerve fibers conduct electrical impulses quicker. If they do that quicker, then you can act quicker, Franklin added, which was useful for both predators trying to catch things and prey trying to flee. Myelin enables rapid impulse conduction without widening the diameter of the nerve cells, allowing them to be packed closer together. It also provides structural support, meaning nerves can grow longer, allowing for longer limbs. In myelin's absence, invertebrates have found other ways to transmit signals faster. Giant squids, for example, have evolved wider nerve cells. Finally, this team wanted to learn whether the retroviral infection happened once to a single ancestral species, or whether it happened more than once. They used computational methods to analyze the retromyelin sequence of 22 jawed invertebrate species, finding the sequence was more similar within that between species, which suggests multiple waves of infection. More discoveries await. One tends to think of viruses as pathogens or disease-causing agents, says Franklin, but the reality is more complicated, he said. At various points in history, retroviruses have entered the genomes and integrated themselves into species' reproductive cells, allowing to be passed on to future generations. One of the most well-known examples is Plantia. One of the defining characteristics of most mammals, which is we acquired from a pathogen embedded in our genome in the deep past. And there are probably more discoveries waiting to be made, said Goshia. Brad Zerko, neuroscientist at the Stanford University not affiliated with the research, says it fills in a major piece of the puzzle on how myelin came to be during evolution and calls the paper exciting and insightful. What if the ADHD one? All right. We finally know how the giant sea spiders came into this world. Woo! In the icy waters of Antarctica lurks an entirely mysterious ecosystem. There, scuttling across the floor bottom, sea floor on the spiny little legs, eerie sea spiders make their home. Oh yeah, I've heard of. There was a few others that I can't recall right offhand that they talk about. Like they mentioned of the Plessia, but I I remember reading this years ago about other certain viruses that helped a lot, but and one of the ideas that why so many people have like so many allergies and all this other stuff, like um when normally people didn't seem to have as much, is because of how much we've sterilized our environment to the point where um, things that normally, even though it would hurt you in one way, would help you in a different way. When it comes to things like um, building up immune systems, or one of the things is some parasites I remember that they talked about needed to be in the society in a certain amount, not too much, but that actually help boost other parts of your immune system. But I can't remember those papers right offhand. Um, one known as the giant Arctic sea spider, Colessinus megalonyx, has one of its secrets revealed. Scientists have finally seen the way that these curious creatures reproduce, and as far as experts know, it's unlike any other species of sea spiders. In most sea spiders, the male parent takes care of the babies by carrying them around while they develop, says marine ecologist Amy Moran of the University of Hawaii at Manoa. That's what's weird, is that despite the descriptions and research going back over 140 years, no one has ever seen the gigantic Antarctic spiders brooding their young, or knows anything about their development. Despite the name, sea spiders are not actually spiders that live in the sea, nor are they actually crustaceans like spider crabs. They are marine arthropods that belong in a group all their own known as plantopods. The phylogeny of which has been surprisingly tricky to classify. You know, of all the things that I'm able to say, I'll wait till the ad break's over. But of all the things that I'm able to say, I'm getting a drink. Getting a drink. It says ad break in progress, so I'm just chilling. Letting my voice. Yeah, letting my voice, you know. Oh, while talking. Da 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 da. Okay, 6, 5, 4. All right. Commercial break in. Go. Nevertheless, they are very successful. They can be found in different environments all around the world, including deep and shallow waters of varying salinity, excuse me, and various temperature ranges. While we don't know much about sea spiders as we do other animals, their reproduction is pretty well characterized. Once a pair has decided to mate, the male climbs into the female and they line up the genital pores on their legs. Legs? Okay, alright. The female releases her legs and the male fertilizes externally. Then the female makes an exit while the male stores the eggs on a pair of special legs called ovagers to carefully tend to them while they incubate. I have to see this. Oh my fucking god. Although we've known about this particular species of giant Antarctic sea spider since 1881, its particular reproductive habits have never been verified as typical. I had to see this. Oh my god. We're watching this together. Is it too loud? Scientists have been unable to determine how the long-legged creature reproduced. It took a team from Hawaii, so it's about what I'm reading. One parent attaches thousands of eggs to the rocky bottom. Several months later, the tiny... Other sea spiders around the world have carried their babies before they hatch.
These giant sea spiders, the males do care for the young, but they do it differently, and they do it in a much simpler way than the other sea spiders. So it may provide a kind of a look at the evolutionary bridge that leads to fathers taking care of their offspring.
So the organisms and the ecosystems that are down there are very difficult to study. And to be able to find something that has been, I guess, eluded researchers for 140 plus years is really amazing.
At the end of 2021, Moran and her colleagues made an expedition to Antarctica to study the phenomenon known as polar gigantism. It's a phenomenon, where many polar species are much physically larger than their lower layered latitude relatives. Thank you so much for the raid, Sassy Snot. How are you doing? Normally, I'd ask what you were playing, but since this is a science stream, in the just chatting category, I'll just say, what are you doing? What you doing? And thank you so much for the raid. I should probably do an intro. Hi, my name's Ishnai Ciarfox. I'm normally a variety game streamer, but on every first and third Thursday of the month, I do science streams where I find a whole bunch of new scientific articles that I really find interesting, or things that are interesting, and talk about it, that are more in the science range, maybe even history, but yeah, because I'm a nerd, and nerdy nerd. Woo! So what were you doing? Right now we're talking about giant sea spiders and how they reproduce. Crappy art? I don't know. Our art isn't always crappy. And sometimes when people say crappy art, they just don't trust their skills on whether they're good at it or not. Which I'm saying that as somebody who does that all the time. So, digital art or physical art or some kind of art? Digital art. Nice. By the way, this is other spiders, apparently. The sea spiders. Think about this. Okay, I'm gonna read this aloud. This is the new thing they found out for at least the ones in Antarctica. While we don't know how much about sea spiders as we do other animals, their reproduction has been pretty well characterized. Once a pair has decided to mate, the male climbs onto the female, and they line up the genital pores on their legs. The female releases her eggs, and the male fertilizes them externally. Then the male makes an exit, while the male stores the eggs on the pair of special legs called ovagers. Practicing values and such. Okay. But they found out for at least the Antarctic giant spider, sea spider, is something different. Okay, Moran and her colleagues made an expedition to Antarctica to study the I always say that phenomenon, if you're wondering, because I might be dyslexic. Who knows? Who am I saying? Kidding. I am dyslexic along with all the other things, so I will fuck up words and have fun with it. This phenomenon, whereas many polar species are much physically larger than their low latitude relatives, sea spiders are no exception. Most species of spiders are smaller than a fingernail. Species of sea spiders are smaller than a fingernail. At the poles, sea spiders can leg spans can reach 70 centimeters or 2.3 feet. While diving under the ice in McMurdo Sound, some of the team came across the gigantic Antarctic spiders that appear to be mating. So they gently collected the animals and transferred them to an observation tank to figure out how the heck these enigmatic creatures procreate. How would you like it if, you know, an alien came down, said, "Hi, we want to figure out how you mate." Oy. They carefully watched 2 separate breeding groups, and the result were astonishing. Between them, they produced thousands of eggs seen as gelatinous clouds that surrounded a single spider that previously had been part of a mating group. One parent, probably the male, took this cloud of eggs and over the course of 2 days painstakingly glued them to the substrate at the bottom of the tank. There, the eggs developed for several months before hatching into tiny little sea spider larvae. The first hatching occurred 8 months after spawning. Following the observation of the tanks, the researchers spotted similar gelatinous clouds around the adult sea spiders several times in the wild. Collection and analysis shows that these too were eggs. So unlike other sea spiders whose reproduce strategy is known, the giant Antarctic sea spiders stash their eggs in rocks on the sea floor to incubate. The incubation period of many species of sea spider is unknown, but we know for one species, the North Atlantic Literite period, it's around 1 to 3 months, at least in laboratory settings. It's unknown why the gigantic Arctic sea spiders don't brood their young in the same way as other sea spiders, but the length of incubation may have something to do with it. I figured you brought him over, Fox. Okay. The connection with Digimon continues. Go ahead and follow. Over a matter of weeks, the stowed eggs are covered in a carpet of algae, making them effectively invisible. This neatly explains why no one's seen them before, but also suggests that hiding under the algae for periods of at least 8 months might be a safer bet than hanging out on Dad's far more vulnerable legs. We're lucky to see this, says marine biologist Aaron Hall of the University of Hawaii. The opportunity to work directly with these amazing animals in the Antarctic meant we could learn things no one has ever guessed. So what's your favorite Final Fantasy? Have to ask that, and the correct answer is always 9. I'm joking. The correct answer is anything but 13. Also, I am playing Persona 5, but I have to do the event in Genshin before it ends tomorrow, so I'll be doing that, then going back over to Persona 5. So, whoa! Tiny worms living near Chernobyl have evolved a remarkable new talent. You know, multiple eyes. No, I'm joking. The microscopic worms that live their lives in the highly radioactive environment of the Chernobyl exclusion zone appear to do so completely free of radiation damage. Nematodes collected from the area which have shown no signs of damage to their genomes, contrary to what might be expected for organisms living in such a dangerous place. The findings didn't suggest that the is safe, the researchers say, but rather the worms are resilient and are able to adroitly adapt to conditions that might be inhospitable to other species. This says a team of biologists led by Sofia Tontori of the New York University could offer some insights into the DNA repair mechanisms that could one day be adapted for human medicine. Since the explosion of a reactor at Chernobyl nuclear plant in April 1986, the area around it and the nearby town of Pripyat in Ukraine has been strictly off limits to anyone without a government approval. The radioactive materials deposited in the environment expose organisms to extremely unsafe levels of ionized radiation, greatly enhancing the risk of mutation, cancer, and death. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of years before Chernobyl, or Chornobyl, spelled in Ukraine, is safe for human habitation again. Most of us know that and steer clear accordingly. Well, but animals, well, they don't understand to stay away. They go where they want, and the exclusion zone has since been a strange sort of radioactive 2,600 square kilometer, 1,000 mile square mile animal sanctuary. Tests of the animals that live in the regions have shown clear genetic differences from animals that don't, but there's still a lot we don't know about the effects of the disaster on local ecosystems. One of the documentaries I watched a while ago talked about how some of the birds that are born in there, like the two-tailed swallow or something, it sometimes would be born without the second part of the tail and less likely to survive, that kind of stuff. The guy would have a net to catch them in. Chernobyl was a tragedy of incomprehensible scale, but we still don't have a great grasp on the effects of the disaster on the local populations. Did the sudden environmental shifts select for species or even individuals within a species that are naturally more resistant to ionized radiation? One way to gain insights into this question is to look at nematodes, microscopic roundworms that live in a range of habitats, including the bodies of other organizations. Nematodes can be remarkably hardy, and there have been multiple cases of nematodes reawakening after thousands of years frozen in permafrost. They have simple genomes and live short lives, which means multiple generations can be studied in a short space of time. This makes them excellent model organisms for studying a range of things, from biological development to DNA repair and toxin response. This is why Tontori and her colleagues went digging in Chernobyl to find nematodes of the species of the Ocelis tipula, which typically lives in soil. They collected hundreds of nematodes from rotten fruit, leaf litter, and the soil, using Geiger counters to measure the ambient radiation and wearing protective suits against the radioactive dust. Researchers cultured more than 300 of their collected worms in a laboratory and selected 15 species for genome sequencing. These sequenced genomes were then compared to the sequenced genomes of 5 species from elsewhere in the world: the Philippines, Germany, the United States, Mauritius, and Australia. The CEZ worms were more genetically similar to each other than they were to other worms, with the genetic distance corresponding to the geographic distance for the entire 20-strand sample. But signs of DNA damage from the radiation environment were lacking. The teams carefully analyzed the worms' genomes and found no evidence of large-scale chromosomal rearrangement expected from the mutagenic environment. They also found no correlation between the mutation rate of the worms and the strength of the ambient radiation at the location each worm hailed from. Finally, they conducted tests on the descendants of each of the 20 worm strands to determine how well the population tolerates DNA damage. Although each lineage had a different tolerance level, this too had no correlation with the ambient radiation to which their ancestors had been exposed to. The team could only conclude that there's no evidence of any genetic impact of the CEZ environment on the genomes. And what they did could help scientists try and figure out why some humans are more susceptible to cancer than to others. Now that we know that which strains of the worms were more sensitive or more tolerant to DNA damage, we can use these strands to study why different individuals are more likely than others to suffer the effects of carcinogens. Thinking about how individuals respond differently to DNA damage agents in the environment is something that will help us have a clearer vision of our own risk factors. All right, we found a new landform. Kind of. Well, it's not landform, it's underwater form. Underwater mountains, twice the height of Burj Khalifa, discovered off the Chilean coast. I know words. The crew of the Falcor 2 research vessel was at it again. In January, the team discovered 4 underwater mountains off the coast of Chile. The vessel has now identified 29 seamounds, hills, and trenches since 2012. The seamounds range from height from 5,220 feet, 1,591 meters, to a staggering 8,796 feet, which is 2,681 meters. For reference, the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, is half the size at 2,717 feet tall. The seamounts were not previously included in any bathymetry database the team could find, and were stumbled upon as the crew was on its way to study gravity anomalies on the seafloor. Aha! Examining gravity anomalies is a fancy way of saying we looked for bumps on a map, and when we did, we located these... Looking for bumps on... We located these very large seamounts while staying on the schedule for our first science expedition in Chile at the start of this year, said John Fulmer, a marine technician for the Ocean Institute. To date, the research vessels Falcor and Falcor 2 have mapped 580,000 square miles, or 1.5 million square kilometers of the seafloor. When the vessels are heading to a new location, they typically collect mapping data, helping fill in the gaps in our knowledge, what lies on the seafloor. With 75% of the ocean still to be mapped, there's much to be uncovered, says Michael Phillips, project director of Seabed 2030, an effort to map the complete seabed by the end of the decade. Ocean mapping is crucial to our understanding of the planet, and in turn our ability to ensure its protection and sustainable management. Often the mountains and trenches on the seafloor provide a haven for deep-sea organisms like coral, sponges, and anemones. Reefs are biodiversity hotspots in their own right. Last year, Falcor 2 captured a remarkable video of hydrothermal vents on an underwater mountain range, an imagery of a vibrant coral reefs off the Galapagos. Detailed maps of the seafloor can even reveal bits of human history. In 2019, a different research team revealed jarring maps showing craters on the Pacific floor made by the Bikini Atoll nuclear tests, and the ocean floor needs to be preserved. In 2020, indicated that it'd take about 50 years for the seafloor off of Peru to recover from deep-sea mining done in the mid-20th century. All right, this one's more recent, as in yesterday. Accidental deep-sea ocean discovery changes our understanding of the Earth. Studying a rock is like reading a book. The rock has a story to tell, says Frieder Klein, an associate at the Marine Chemistry and Geochemistry Department at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. I love the Woods Hole. The rocks that Klein and his colleagues analyzed from the submerged flanks of the St. Peter and St. Paul archipelago in the St. Paul's oceanic transform fault about 500 kilometers off the coast of Brazil, tells a fascinating and previously unknown story about the geological carbon cycle. Transform faults, where tectonic plates move past each other, are one of the three main plate boundaries in the Earth, and about 48,000 kilometers in length globally, while others being the global mid-ocean ridge, which is about 65,000 kilometers, and the subduction zone, which is 55,000 kilometers, excuse me. I remember what the subduction zone is, where they're basically one side swallowing the other. Carbon cycling at midpoint ridges and subduction zones have been studied for decades. In contrast, scientists have paid relatively scant attention to CO2 and oceanic transform faults. The transformation faults were considered somewhat boring places for quite some time because of the low magmatic activity there, says Klein. What we now have pieced together is the mantle rocks that are exposed along these ocean transform faults represent a particularly vast sink for CO2. Partial melting of the mantle releases CO2 that becomes entrained in thermal fluid, reacts with the mantle closer to the seafloor, and captures it there. This is part of the geological carbon cycle that was not known before, says Klein, leader of the new journal study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Because transform faults have not been accounted for previous estimates of global geological CO2 fluxes, and the mass transfer of magmatic CO2 to the altered oceanic mantle and seawater may be larger than previously thought. The amount of CO2 emitted at the transform faults is negligible compared to the amount of anthropogenic or human-driven CO2. However, on the geological timescales before humans emitted so much CO2, geological emissions from the Earth's mantle, including from the transform faults, were a major driving force in the Earth's climate. As the paper states, global anthropogenic CO2 emissions have estimated to be on order of 36 gigatons per year, dwarfing the estimates of average geological emissions, which is 0.26 GT per year, to the atmosphere and hydrosphere. Yet, over geological timescales, the emission of CO2 sourced from the Earth's mantle has been pivotal in regulating the Earth's climate and habitability, as well as the carbon concentrated on the surface reservoirs, including oceans, atmospheres, and lithospheres. As before, this is the anthropogenic combustion of, well, human! Understanding climate change through geological studies. In order to fully understand modern human-caused climate change, we need to understand the natural climate fluctuations in the Earth's deep past, which are tied to perturbations of the Earth's natural carbon cycle. Our work provides insight into time-scale fluxes of carbon between the Earth's mantle and the ocean/atmosphere system, says co-author Tim Schrodinger, member of the facility at Bennington College, Vermont. Large changes in such carbon fluxes over millions of years have caused the Earth's climate. Hi, Ardwolf, how are you? I'm having my twice-a-month geeking time. I do articles that are interesting. First and third Thursday of every month. Woo! But how are you doing? Remember, large changes in carbon fluxes over the millions of years have caused the Earth's climate to be much warmer or colder than it is today. To better understanding carbon cycling between the Earth's mantle and ocean, Klein and Schrodinger, and colleagues studied the formation of soapstone and other magnesite-based bearing assemblages during the mineral carbonation of the mantle periodicity. Periotite, in the St. Paul's Transformation Fault, the paper noticed. Oh, I'm sorry you've been sick, but I'm glad that you're better. Fueled by the magnetism in or below the root zone of the transform fault, subsequent degassing, the fault constitutes a conduit for CO2-rich hydrothermal fluids, while carbonation of the peritite represents the potentially vast sink for the emitted CO2s. The researchers argue in the paper that the combination of low extents of melting, which generates melts, enrich the incompatible elements, volatiles, and particularly CO2, and the presence of peritite at the ocean's transform faults creates conditions conducive to extensive mineral carbonation. The rocks were collected using human-occupied vehicles during a 2017 cruise to the area. Finding and analyzing these rocks was a dream come true. We had predicted the presence of carbonate-altered oceanic rocks for 12 years ago, but we couldn't find them anywhere. We went to the archipelago to explore for low-temperature hydrothermal activity, and we failed miserably to find any such activity there. It was unbelievable we were able to find these rocks in the transform fault, because we found them by chance while looking for something else. Like I said, I'm glad you're back. Well, at least feeling better. Alright, mountain creature with massive head and blue eyes discovered as a new species. High up on the remote mountains of South America live some bumpy creatures with massive heads. As millennia after millennia tick forward, these creatures were seemingly left behind. When scientists first encountered these relics in the mist, they discovered a new species. Reaching to the summit of Nebelina Mastiff is not easy. The mountain is a highly eroded sandstone plateau, that spans the Venezuela-Brazil border, according to the study published in February in the volume of peer-reviewed Journal of Molecular Phylogenetics and Evolution. A team of researchers visited the remote peak for several days in 2017 to survey its wildlife, the study said. Researchers suspect that there were unique and possibly very old animals living there. And they were right. Researchers captured 22 frogs that didn't match any known records, and quickly realized they discovered a new yet seemingly ancient species. Caligoraphae doylii, or Dole's mist frog. Dole's mist frogs are considered medium-sized, reaching up to about 1.3 inches in length, the study says. They have massive heads with blue eyes and slightly protruding nostrils. Their robust bodies are covered in bumpy warts. Photos show the color variations of Dole's mist frogs. One frog is a dull dirt brown with some lighter white patches near its mouth. Another is a reddish brown with some black blotches. Doyle mist frogs were found in open grassy habitats near the researchers' campsite, and between elevations of approximately 6,500 and 8,500 feet, the study says. One frog was seen sitting next to and seemingly guarding a clutch of at least 11 round whitish eggs. So far, the new species has only been found in the mastiff Nebelina Mastiff, a tabletop mountain that spans the Venezuela-Brazil Venezuela-Brazil border. The researchers said they named the new species after Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock, because of his influential novel The Lost World, in which he depicted an ancient creature surviving until the present era on an isolated summit of a remote tabletop mountain, like this frog. The new species was identified by its skeleton, coloring, habitat, body shape, and DNA. The study says the new species has such an ancient figures that researchers classified it within a new family. Always. There's another new species called the... you can read that yourself. I'm sorry. I hate slaughtering these people's names. I just feel bad. All right. First ever sighting of a live newborn great white may help solve the standing mystery of shark sciences. This was a while back ago, but I've been saving it. Great whites, the largest predatory sharks in the world, with the most fatal attacks on humans, are tough to imagine as newborn babies. That is particularly because no one has seen one in the wild until now. Wildlife filmmaker Carlos Guana and the UC Riverside biology doctorate student Philip Stearns were scanning the waters for sharks on July 9th, 2023 near Santa Barbara in California's Central Coast. That day, something exciting appeared in the viewfinder of Guana's drone camera. It was a shark pup, unlike they've ever seen before. Great whites, referred to only as white sharks by scientists, are gray on top and white on the bottom. But this roughly 5-foot-long shark was pure white. We enlarged the images, put them in slow motion, and realized that the white layer being shed from the body as it was swimming. I believe it was a newborn white shark shedding its embryonic layer. These observations are documented in a new paper in the Environmental Biology of Fishes journal. The paper also details the significance of seeing a live newborn white shark. Guana is known online as the Malibu artist. He has spent thousands of hours filming sharks around the world, and his videos of them swimming close to beachgoers have millions of views. What he and Stearns observed could help solve the long-standing mystery of great white birthing habits. Where white sharks give birth is one of the holy grails of shark science. No one has ever been able to pinpoint where they are born, nor has anyone ever seen a newborn baby shark alive. There have been dead white sharks found inside deceased pregnant mothers, but nothing like this. Though the paper authors acknowledge it's possible that the white film the shark shed could have been a skin condition, the duo did not believe this should be the case. If that is what we saw, then that too is monumental, because there's no such condition that has ever been reported for these sharks. For many reasons, the duo believes that what they saw was in fact a newborn great white. First, great white females give birth to live pups. While in utero, the embryonic sharks might feed on unfertilized eggs for protein. The mothers offer additional nourishment to the growing pups with milk secreted into the uterus. I believe what we saw was the baby shedding its uterine milk. A second later is the presence of a large, likely pregnant great whites in this area. Ghana has observed them here in previous years and in the weeks leading up to the observation. I filmed 3 very large sharks that appeared to be pregnant in this specific location in the days prior. On this day, one of them dove down, and not long after, this fully white shark appears. It's not a stretch to deduce where the baby came from. Thirdly, the shark's size and shape are almost indicative of a newborn. What the two observed was thin, short, and rounded. In my opinion, this one was likely hours, maybe one day old at most. Finally, this location off the coast of Central California has long been proposed as a birthing location for great whites. There are a lot of hypothetical areas, but despite intense interest in these sharks, no one has seen a birth or a newborn pup in the wild. This may be the first evidence we have of a pup in the wild, making this a definitive birthing location. Many scholars believe that great whites are born further out to sea. This pup was filmed so close to shore, roughly 1,000 feet from the beach. It's significant because its age means it was most likely born in shallow waters. Great whites are listed as the international endangered species. Further research is needed to confirm that these waters are indeed a great white breeding ground, but if it does, we will want lawmakers to step in and protect the waters to help white sharks keep thriving.